Hello, it's Brad Laurie or BlockchainBrad, and today a crypto convo with a good friend and trusted colleague. His name is Robert Beadles, or Crypto Beadles as many know him. Rob, thank you very much, mate, for making time to speak with me today.
Hey, thanks a bunch for having me, man. It's always great to chat with you. It's been fun the past day or so.
Absolutely. And for those who are wondering, we have had some, pre-conversation chats because obviously it's just good to catch up as colleagues and as mates. Now, Rob is well known in this space. He's done a multitude of interviews. He's a personality that many can't help but, respect because he is all about trust on the blockchain. So, Rob, the idea of this is just have an open conversation, have a relaxed one if I can possibly do that, because I tend to be more formal. But mate, yeah, thank you so much for your time today, and let's just get into it and start with you. Tell us a bit about yourself and what really interests you in blockchain.
In blockchain, man. All right. Well, Christian, husband, father, that's who I am at the core. I build businesses. I started off really young. I've been with my wife since we were 14 years old. And so, we were married at 17 years old with our first son. We went through, the whole government, assistance, the welfare, the food stamps, all that kind of stuff that, sucked. But I'm glad that, we had that ability to, to live, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd always been, a little techie. I used to, have bulletin board systems and drive my parents crazy, taking and hogging the phone lines because, we needed a modem, we needed to connect and talk to the world, right? And so, I started off, with like little Commodore 64s and Amigas and 186DXs and all that. And so I'd always had, kind of a fundamental understanding and more so than most of, programming and tech. And so, I love doing that. But getting married early, right, I had to make money. And so the first thing that came to mind was construction because I'd been doing that for free, learning about it. And so I went into the construction field and ended up running the business, not mine, somebody else's. And then I got into it with them and they said, hey, man, if you can do a better job, go start your own company. So I did. And I built up one of the largest construction service companies here in California. And around 2009, yeah, God's great, man. And I got great people. And, it's just a big family. But around 2009, that big family and all these great people basically made it to where I didn't have to be there every day anymore. So I got to go back to my roots and get my geek on, right? So I, created like the world's first reusable envelope. And then I created, this greeting card you can put your own video or photos in called Memory Tag. And I ended up, talking with the United States Post Office, and they loved the tech so much they started having me do, things for them. So we created a software company, and we started creating like applications and platforms, for the United States Post Office. And then around 2011, my buddy Max Kaiser, the guy that was talking as normal as I am right now, and then just flies off the handle, F Jamie Dimon, all that kind of stuff. He's incredible. I love the guy. He's brilliant.
In his colorful suits as well.
Oh yeah. But he opened my eyes, man, in 2011. 2011, he told me about Bitcoin. I looked into it, got bit by the bug, and then around 2017, everybody knew about Bitcoin, right? So I was getting blasted by people left and right. They heard it's going to the moon. Everybody's going to get Lambos, all this stuff, but they didn't know how to navigate the waters. So after they asked me a bunch of times, how to do this, how to do that, a couple of guys that were smarter than me just said, hey, dude, why don't you put together a video for us? So that way you don't have to answer the same questions over and over and over again. So we put those videos together. I've got a lot of friends and family that watched them, a lot of celebrity friends. They shared them. They kind of went crazy viral. We, have done it, like 1,000 times now, right, for friends and family. And we give away $100 of crypto on every single one of our videos to get people into crypto. We don't take money from any project or anything like that whatsoever. We're just there to kind of let the CEOs and the founders and the builders explain their projects, to the friends and family. And the family's grown, man. We've got our YouTube channel, Crypto Beadles, me and my son. We've got a TV show in 46 million households. We've got the face of Trading View sessions for people that want to start understanding what trading is, all that kind of stuff. And then we created the Monarch wallet in 2017, and every week it just gets better and better and better. So I've been rambling for a minute.
I love it, though. I love it. I mean, what I will say, Rob, the reason why we've known each other for some time is because, you mentioned things like you're an entrepreneur. You mentioned things like you give away $100 with each of your, pieces of information that you release. And, initially, when I have to admit, when I first saw those kind of giveaways, I instantly thought, oh, is this about, money over information? But knowing you, I can attest that, that was just, once again, part of that entrepreneurial business savvy that you have, but underneath that's what I looked at, sincerely. So the information is what matters, and you're always about truth, trust, and transparency. Things like BlockVera, something we're starting at the moment, stands for as well. And so once again, mate, kudos to you, because you maintain that ethos of information, of trying to provide people with access to that when many others are actually selling that information in some way. So I really like how you allow for people to have access to that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if I take money from one of these projects, to me, a piece of me is going to feel like I'm bought and paid for, and I'm going to have to explain to people, that I took money, and I'm really, trying to show or expose them or whatever. But when there's that exchange, you kind of become an employee of sorts, right? It kind of takes, some of the not only credibility, but it also just takes,
that objectivity.
Yeah. It takes some of the objectivity out of it. And so, but the reason I give away the crypto, man, it's, there's a big chunk of my audience that's, from around the world. It's not all from the US. And a lot of people, they're hurting for money. And a lot of people want to know what crypto and blockchain is. And so they stumble across our channel, or some of my friends or family points them to it. And maybe it's, people in the Philippines, or maybe it's people in Venezuela or whatnot, but they download the Monarch wallet, and then they get that $100, and now they're paying for tuition, right? They're paying for food, for rent, school, all kinds of stuff, man. It's incredible to see the videos and the photos come back. And, it's one of those things that, it does feel better to give than to receive, man. And when you see those stories and the people, how it affects them, and how not only do they get into crypto and blockchain, but they're able to actually, maybe take care of their family or something, because $100 goes a long freaking way in some of these countries, right? They may not go far in Australia, or maybe not go far in New Zealand or the US, but dude, like in Venezuela, you're like a freaking king with $100, right?
And trust me, Rob, I mean, even in the regions you mentioned, the more affluent ones, it still goes a long way. I mean, $100 is $100, no matter where we are, and some stretch it further. But the point is, you do give that from your team to certain parties. And obviously, the interest is, or the aim and objective is, to have more distribution, more widespread adoption of the technologies themselves. And so, is that one of the reasons why you're so passionate about the projects or blockchain startups more generally?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the internet bubble, only a handful of them made it, right? There was a ton that came out. Handful made it. We're going to see probably the same thing in crypto, right? So, it's kind of fun to learn about these different companies, to learn about the teams, to learn about the problems they're trying to solve. It's genuinely just intriguing to me and to a lot of other people. And so we just give them what they want, right? They want to know, what are they trying to solve? Who's trying to solve it? And tell us, a little bit about the person, right? And so in doing that, it starts bringing more awareness to blockchain, to crypto, the use cases for it, all that kind of cool stuff. And the free crypto, dude, nothing gets somebody involved in crypto more than somebody that doesn't know anything about crypto that just gets some free crypto, right? They're like, whoa, what is this?
So
like,
true.
Man, they just sent me this magic money. What can I do with it, right? And so they have to start their journey, right? They got to figure out, okay, a wallet, an exchange, you can earn interest on it, you can do this, you can do that. Just kind of opens their mind. It's, kind of like the old red pill on Matrix, right? Free crypto, it does.
Exactly, Rob.
But you're always going to get haters in the space, and they just don't understand it. They're just like, oh, he's got an angle. He's doing this. He's doing that. It's like, no, man, God is taking care of us. We $100 a day is not going to hurt me. And this is going to help, somebody on the other side. And so that's why we do it, man. Just to help people and to bring adoption to blockchain. Because at the end of the day, if it's just us, just talking to ourselves, nobody else is going to get involved, right? Now, we can only have so many conversations, but we can start talking to new people and getting them in. Maybe it's just one at a time, but whatever.
Exactly.
It's
and Rob,
somebody more.
It's really interesting, Rob, because you're passionate about expanding the reach, expanding the conversation, that crypto conversation beyond the microcosm that we kind of have it and those closed walls in the crypto community itself. But do you find also, given that, you've spoken to so many CEOs, you've spoken to many other proponents of blockchain, some engineers, the back end as well. Do you ever get concerned about the risks in indirectly supporting some of what we would call pump and dump schemes? And I know that you don't, but the risk, as you mentioned before, is that few will likely make it. The majority of these startups won't. So in talking to those, and then also expanding the reach through those offerings that you provide, and there's giveaways, do you ever get concerned that inherent in doing that there's a risk in some of these just not being of value?
Look, man, a lot of these are not going to be of value, but the education process that their people are going to go through, but just from learning about the founders, maybe they'll learn something they didn't know. That's maybe not even blockchain related. Maybe they'll learn about blockchain and crypto that they'll be able to apply to something else because of that interview. Look, from the very beginning, I've been very clear that none of my videos are ever financial advice, and that it streams through the video as we're talking. I've been very upfront with people. Out of like the 1,000 people I've interviewed, I think I've invested maybe 8. All right. So,
and you're also transparent about that as well.
I tell them, I'm like, look, guys, like for instance, like with Serum Labs, like I bought a ton of those tokens, early on, right? Because it sounds cool, man. You're gonna have a blockchain phone. That just sounds like so sexy, cool. It's like all the things that I stand for. It's like, all right, technology, crypto, blockchain in a freaking phone using Android just sounds incredible, right? And I told people, I'm like, look, guys, do not buy this token. All right, don't buy it. Don't buy it because I bought it. This is just something I'm excited about, and I'm gonna buy 4 of these phones, and I'm going to give them away to the audience just because they didn't give them to me. They didn't pay me to say anything. I never took a dime from any of them. It's just something I was genuinely, excited about. And I still am. They actually delivered the phone. That's more than 99.9% of all those companies out there. But the sad thing is most people, they just judge a project by the token price, right? So if the token price is,
it's a big problem.
Yeah, if the token, yeah. And then you get some of the CEOs and stuff that, maybe they're not so altruistic. Maybe they take the money. Maybe they do something they shouldn't do with it. I don't know, man. But at the end of the day, they delivered a product, right? And it's cool. I use it every single day. And so, that again, right, is just an example of something that succeeded but failed, in my opinion, so far, right? Because they don't have the adoption. They did deliver a product. It does work really, really well, but I haven't seen them make constant improvements. So that's a little sad. Right. Then there's, a ton of other projects that just have, great ideas, but it's all on paper. It's all on paper.
And Rob, in
marketplace.
Sure. Sorry to jump in, but I can tell you could talk for hours as well on your own, like I could. But mate, I wanted to talk to you more about also trust when it comes to this assumption that because we speak to a CEO, for example, or someone from a core team, that many people just assume in the space, whether it be crypto or outside of crypto, that there's natural or an inherent veracity in that content. But it's not always the case, as you would know, because sometimes these CEOs are representing a team and a technology that just isn't of substance, as we were alluding to before. So in that sense, do you ever get concerned about those parties in crypto, especially those who are paid, but even those who are unpaid, where they do reviews, they do content that's not actually primary source information, where, again, the person's listening to the CEO. And again, the onus is on, obviously, everyone to do their research. But again, if you're looking at information, there's nothing better, I would argue, than listening to what the team have to say, regardless of whether they're real or not. Do you ever get concerned about the kind of trust people place in other parties, third parties, other influencers, any source of information that may not be from the source itself?
Yeah, I mean, to start, I've always told people, I'm here to educate, not to influence, right? So the last thing I want to ever do is make anybody or tell anybody to buy or go do something, right? A lot of people out there that are on YouTube that talk about projects and get paid for it. Dude, everybody has to eat, right? So a lot of these influencers that are out there, they've got a family to feed, man. They got to do what they got to do, but they need to be transparent with the audience and just say, look, guys, this guy gave me $1,000 to interview him, so you guys can fast forward it if you want. You guys can listen through it if you want. But again, he paid me $1,000 or whatever, and just be transparent with the audience and just tell them, look, man, I don't know if this token is going to go up. I don't know if it's going to go down. I don't know if the project's going to be here next week, but I got a mortgage to pay. I got to feed my kids. So I took $1,000, right? If they're, upfront about that, dude, you're always going to get haters, right?
Well, Rob, can I push the envelope? Can I push this conversation, this topic a bit more? Because I tend to agree with you that obviously being someone who's done ambassadorships, and people who know me would know that that's paid. So, obviously that's transparent as well. And the reason I did those ambassadorships is because I was looking for a balance, a way in which I could support a project that had potential, because we don't know for sure if that project's going to make it. It's literally impossible to know. But through our own due diligence and our transparency, we all make our choices. And that was my choice to do those. But what I can say, Rob, being in this space, in this position that I'm in now, and similar to you, is that some of the people in the space literally are aiming to be influencers as opposed to educationalists or those providing a platform for information as a conduit, essentially. And when it comes to money, a lot of people, I hear that common response of, they've got to eat, they've got to survive. But the reality is in crypto, and I can guarantee you, although I know this, some of those parties that are doing that information and selling, that third-party approach, they aren't just doing it to eat. They aren't just doing it to survive. They are literally charging sometimes above $10,000 a video. So to me, there is a line that people can cross where they start to really think about their own position, their own pockets, how they can capitalize on crypto. There is a real problem in that for me personally, but then there's also the argument that seems to be fine, that if you're transparent and you're doing this for education and you need to eat, okay, fine, charge what you need to do that if that's the case. But when does it become an insidious problem, Rob?
Yeah, so I mean, you covered a lot there. With influencers, right, that are out there solely just to make money off their audience, those guys should burn in hell, right? I mean, those guys that are just gonna, try and take money from their audience to, benefit themselves, those people, they shouldn't be, doing what they're doing, right? And so, for other people, again, every educator, every influencer has to decide what's right for them and then just be transparent about it. And so if they're going to take money, then they just need to be upfront about it and just tell people, look, man, this is sponsored. If you believe in a project and you're on the payroll, just be upfront about it, man. And I think the audience will be okay with that. Don't just, if it's the people that say, hey, look, I just bought a bunch of these tokens. It's going to go up. I know it's going to go up. This thing's going to moon. This thing's, we're aiming for the stars. And even if it sucks, it's still going to land on the moon. Those types of people, man, they're dangerous, right? But people that say, look, I invested in this. Don't do it because I did it. This could go to zero. I don't know. I have no idea. I kind of like what they're doing here. If you own it, tell them.
Sure.
If they paid you, then also own that and say, look, man, I own some tokens and, they paid us to say this or whatever. Just be upfront. And I think the audience respect that. You're always going to get haters, though. You're always going to get haters. You're going to get people that call you a shill. You're going to get people that, call you whatever. But at the end of the day, if you're transparent and open and honest and you explain, what you did, what transaction took place, I think most people in the space will understand, man. They all got jobs. They all got to eat. They all got to pay the bills.
Sure. But I want to ask you as well, and again, and we'll be really transparent about this, Rob, is that sometimes I've also seen certain parties, influencers or educationalists, if we want to call them that, where they'll flip in terms of support for a certain project or lack of support initially. So I'm going to name a name and I'm going to explain this and what I mean. So recently I watched an educational sort of live stream. Chico Crypto was the person who did that, a well-known influencer in this space. He was paid $3,000 by credits to do it. But in doing that interview, it was live streamed with 3 other prominent and respected startups. So we had Matic, Holochain, and I forget the other one. QuarkChain. So, instantly the names attracted me to watch that. So, kudos to him for getting those 4 people on. No issue. But the point I'm making when raising this is that prior to that, several months prior, he was very, very aggressive in not only, the disdain he had for Binance, but literally spoke ill of Matic, which was one of the people on that live stream. Now, my question is, when you're paid $3,000 by credits and you have a guest like Matic on, which was the case, what does that say for the influencer? Is it reasonable that they can do that kind of flip? That kind of transition from such vitriolic diatribe in that direction of Binance and then thus Matic, because that was the case, and then move into something where suddenly, because payments made, that they can not only have that person on the channel, but change their tune, where they're saying, this is possibly one of the projects to watch in the future. It just really, money seems to really have a significant impact in this space.
Yeah, I mean, it does in the world. It doesn't matter what space you're in. There's good actors, there's bad actors, there's people that do all kinds of crazy things for money, right? I didn't see that video. I watch some of Chico's every once in a while. He's one of those guys that, I appreciate what he brings to the space. It's a different perspective, right? But again, I didn't see it. I didn't see or hear, him talk badly about Matic. But when he had those 4 people on, was he talking bad about Matic, right to the guy's face, or did he change his tune entirely and he was just kind of like promoting them.
What had happened is, prior to his, informative discussion, because he essentially, the idea of that paid piece with credits and having those parties on, those CEOs, was to allow people an insight into their position through a process of questioning, which was actually soundly done. He did a good job of that. But my question is more about the change in tune, the change in perspective that can be brought about by essentially, or I'm raising the question more so, of money being put on the table, because he was so direct, not just at Binance, not just at Matic, not just other IEO related projects connected to Binance, but also other influencers like myself. So my question, I'm trying to remove myself from the equation, actually, because whilst, I might have strong views about certain behaviors and actions, in this instance, it's more about questioning how someone can go from so directly anti a project, literally state that because it's connected to Binance, this is what he did. He said that, startups like Harmony, for example, he was very aggressively against them. And he alluded to and stated actually that Matic was another one that was just another, as he called them, Binance shill, or, used other words as well. So the big question I have is, if that's how strongly someone feels, why would they have them on a platform? Why would they have them on their platform? And more importantly, is the payment part of this the reason? Because Chico mentioned that the Matic was a guest of credits, and therefore it was reasonable that they were on that episode. But again, I still have to ask, why would someone have such strong views initially and then switch and allow for that, that party and that speaker to be on their platform? I just get concerned about the power of money and what it can do.
Yeah, people do different things for money. I mean, I guess if you look at his episodes, I guess, where he was talking badly about Matic, and then in this one here, if they were on the show and he was beefing them up or promoting them or something like that, that would probably, be very questionable. If he was doing a good job just interviewing people, and he'd already stated the fact, like for instance, I do not like Litecoin. I am not a fan of Litecoin. I've said that for years. Right. It has nothing to do with, their developers. It has to do with Charlie Lee at the very top selling his freaking cryptocurrency, telling people hodl, hodl, hodl. Next thing you know, he sold all his freaking crypto and everybody else got burned. Right. Not to mention, it was a copy of Bitcoin, right? They just changed it, ASICs and all that kind of stuff. And so, I've been very vocal that I don't like Litecoin. So I brought them on my channel, John Kim, great dude. He's an evangelist. But the whole time I'm telling him, I like you, but I don't like Litecoin. You know what I mean? I'm very upfront.
And how did he feel about that?
He's still, he's a great guy, man. We had a lot of laughs and chuckles, and I said, everybody in crypto needs somebody like you, right? We need these evangelists for every blockchain out there. And, I'm a big fan of John Kim, just not of Litecoin. And he respects that. He's not going to change my mind. Charlie Lee's not going to change my mind. But if I was to then, start supporting it, right? You know what I mean? After me for years saying I don't like it, and then I started supporting it, that would be kind of questionable, right? People can change my mind. People can change my mind.
Right. But, and I think Chico would argue also, if he was here today, and hopefully, at some point he does agree to come on my channel and have a chat, because we were friends a long time ago. But when it comes to being colleagues, it's important that we can be professional. So that question is entirely based on, professional sort of journalistic inquiry. So I'm not suggesting in any sense that, it doesn't offer value. And that's not the case. It's just trying to understand with that instance as an example, whether or not money can really change the quality of our position, or change the integrity that we start with. Because at the end of the day, we don't want the offers of money to really dictate or change what our aim is, and that is to provide good quality information. So kudos to him, for his transparency with sponsorships. He does do that. I'll give him credit for that. But it's just a question among colleagues with you. I wanted to more extrapolate more of the issue itself, because I think it's important. I think a lot of the times money really does come first when it comes to certain speakers in the space, as opposed to the tech. So that's why I wanted to go into the tech with you, starting with Monarch for a start, and then just discuss some of the issues of technology vis-a-vis the interest of network effects and narratives, because they seem to sometimes work against each other, sometimes work with each other. But what matters fundamentally is that tech has utility, tech has meaning. So Monarch is the project that you have spearheaded from the start with your team. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that without me trying to shill it in any way?
So yeah, it's myself and Snabot. We're the founders of Monarch. Around 2017 or so is when he got an idea for reoccurring, basically blockchain transactions, being able to use crypto in a reoccurring fashion. Most people know that you can do that centralized, but it's very difficult to do it decentralized, because blockchain with crypto, once you send it out, it doesn't come back, right? So it's kind of a push technology, so to speak. So he had that idea. And I had already been, speaking with tons and tons of people. And one of the pain points that they'd all mentioned to me was, there's so many apps out there, right? There's so many different things they have to do, so many different things they have to know, not including just where to store their crypto, right? How to send it, buy it, sell it, all that kind of stuff. So the two of us came up and we decided to create one app to access them all. So Monarch is basically a wallet of all the best, services and companies that we partner with through one login. So that way, if you want to store your cryptocurrency there, you can. If you want to buy and sell crypto, you can. If you want to use the built-in decentralized exchange, you can. It's got a portfolio tracker. It's got news aggregator. It's got a ton of different features that allows the user to have access to our partners through one login experience. Anybody that knows about exchanges, they know that they have to go through like a KYC and AML process, exchange A, B, C, D, E, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, imagine with Monarch, you do your KYC one time, and you don't need KYC at all for Monarch Wallet. You can download it today. We don't even have your email address. But anytime you use fiat, you're going to have to KYC and AML. It's just that simple. So if you want to use the buy and sell in Monarch, there's a KYC process, just like there is at every exchange. All right. So once you fill it out one time, now any of these other exchanges or anything else that we're partnered with, if you're like, hey, I want to use that company too, I want to use that service too. Well, you don't have to download their app, re-KYC, create another login. Through Monarch, they would just be able to share their data, if they choose, with that company, and then have a login to it. So now you don't need 40,000 apps for all these 40,000 different services and all these different companies. You would just have one. So one app to access them all. And it's free. It's live today. We've already integrated with like 5 amazing companies. We'll just keep integrating more and more, adding more coin support. People can earn interest on their crypto on it, all kinds of cool stuff. And then we created the reoccurring payment platform as well. So we created Monarch Pay for merchants. A lot of people don't realize the pain points that, merchants have to go through with chargebacks, right? So a chargeback would be, say, Brad, you got a t-shirt company, and every month for $10, I can get a free t-shirt for $10 from you, right? So every month you send me a t-shirt. So I get the t-shirt from you. Then I call my credit card company and say, you know what, Brad never sent me the t-shirt. They give me back my money and I keep your shirt, and you're out the money and the shirt. And this happens every day with merchants for all different types of different, things. With Monarch Pay, that's impossible. They can't do that. And then also as a merchant, they have to pay high transaction fees. So anywhere from 3% to 12%. So people that are using Patreon or PayPal or Visa, MasterCard, American Express, all that stuff, all those high fees are a thing in the past as well. Now it's 1%. So it's 1%, no chargebacks. They have total control of their money the whole time. It's completely decentralized, the entire wallet portion of it. And then there's a kind of like a centralized portion of it too for the merchant. Because now say you have that t-shirt company and you need to mail it to me, right? You need to know my address, right? So you don't want that part on the blockchain, right? So stuff like that, you got to make it a little bit, a little bit more centralized of sorts on the merchant side, right? So that way the merchant can, have the name, the address, the phone number. Maybe they want to put their own landing page, right? So maybe you want to create a funnel. So after people subscribe to your t-shirt plan, you want them routed to your website to go through another funnel to do maybe a couple different steps. Or maybe you have a trading course, right? And after they subscribe, you want them shot over to the trading course to start right then and there. You can do all that stuff through Monarch Pay. And so, we tried to add all those cool bells and whistles that people would want, merchants would want, things like having access to all their users from one click. So that way they could download an entire CSV and import it into QuickBooks. So that way they know who to send the t-shirts to every single month. Or when somebody opts out of the plan, right? Because sometimes you sign up for something and you don't really like it, right? You just don't want to do it anymore. Well, there's a simple as a single button. You just kill your plan. You kill the subscription. The merchant can do it or the user can do it. And the whole time, we're not in the middle. We're never, ever in the middle of your guys' money. So, it's always between the merchant and the customer. And again, it's available now. This is monarchpay.com. monarchwallet.com, all this stuff is, usable today. It's great. And
Right.
every week
Well,
it's just going to get better and better.
Well, certainly you pitched us well on, the robustness of the platform that you've built, because a lot of people don't understand perhaps how replete it is with the different services. It's not just the wallet, as you mentioned. But again, my intention is certainly not to, shill in any way any particular product that's, led out by a prominent speaker. But in that sense, I want to ask you as well, Rob, given that you are such a frontline speaker, someone who's respected as essentially a blockchain journalist in many respects, or a startup journalist, as well as also someone who started their own startup that is tokenized and does have, a position in the space. Do you ever consider that a conflict of interest, or do you have any haters with regard to comments and fed your way? I want to open this up because, it is an issue. It doesn't happen a lot in the space where there's prominence from both sides in that personality and in that representation.
Yeah, so you're always going to get haters. I don't care who you are. I mean, look at Jesus. They put him to a cross and murdered him, right? So I'm just saying, and all he did was love people, all right? So you're always going to get haters, right? Always, no matter what. But if you truly believe in something, right, why hide? Why not just be out there, telling the world about it? I know that it's safe. I know that it's secure. I know that it's reliable. I know that it's free for people to download and use today. So why not tell people about it? Why have somebody else that doesn't put their blood, sweat, and tears, their own freaking money, like 90-something% of this is funded with my or Snae's money, who best to talk about it than the people that actually built it, right? So,
right.
And I've always told people.
Let's talk about that, Rob. I want to jump in. You mentioned 90% of your money, and that's also rare. You didn't go out and outsource a lot of the capital, like we've seen the capital raisers using pseudo utility tokens in that instance to raise capital. So talk us through the importance of utility from your perspective, because if you've raised a lot of the money internally through if you've put a lot of the money into Monarch to really make this a startup for the future, how do you sort of look at current approaches to utility token models, given that so much fundraising has happened in the past with ICOs, IEOs and the like? And also, what's your plan for the future in terms of the Monarch token becoming something of more utility?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I've said in the beginning is 99% of all these cryptos out there are securities. They just are. They're using them to raise money. People are expecting profit from them. Otherwise, there's no real reason to buy them, right?
Right.
So I've been very, 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 very upfront from the very beginning. I always told people, don't buy our tokens, go earn them. All right. So go earn them, go download our free wallet, go join our referral bounty. You'll earn freaking tokens, right? So that way you don't have to give me any money. You just go out there, do some, earn them, right? Go do some tasks, right? Go, retweet something, to go do this, go do that, and kind of spread the word of Monarch. And so we were very upfront about that. But even more so in the very, very beginning, we wanted to make sure that we were compliant, right? So in the very beginning, we made sure that we filed our paperwork properly with the different states. We made sure that we filed our paperwork with the SEC. We acquired a broker-dealer license that we're waiting for FINRA and SEC approval. It's, materially complete, all that kind of stuff. We have some of the best attorneys on the planet working, with the SEC and FINRA, man. So from the very start, we want to make sure we're compliant. And the reason why that's important is I realize that most everything out there is a security token that, is under the guise of a utility token, at least under current law. So we have a straight up security token. That way you've got a security token and you got a utility token. The security token is for accredited investors, man. It's for people in the US that are accredited investors. All right. And they get 15% of Monarch's income. And so that is a straight up freaking security. But how are they paid it? They're paid it with their utility token. We never ever said the utility token is going to go up in value. Never said it's going to go down in value. All we said is its use case is to pay the security token holders our income. And to cut the fees within the exchanges within the Monarch ecosystem. So like, for instance, we're here with Monarch Pay pretty soon, you'd be able to save, 0.5% using Monarch tokens, right? It's only costs like 1% now, but it's going to be even cheaper. So there's a benefit, for using a straight up utility token.
So, and also you stand by the term utility in this instance. So what you're saying is quite a lot in there, because you're saying that utility tokens can exist. This is based on your own modeling, as long as it's the focus is on utility, use, application, interaction between parties. But the focus clearly of them is not to have some sort of price volatility. The intention is not
No.
for blockchain bets. But Rob, in the sense of the security, let's move to that for a second, because we see the emergence of Reg A's. We see a non-security based system emerging as well, where there is, a potential for this anomalous sort of nebulous space emerging now of what to regard them terminologically. Are they in that instance still a utility token, but are supported by the SEC through Reg A, Reg D, whatever? It's getting a bit confusing because, as you said, rightly so, many of the utility tokens of the past simply were not. But then we also have all the way back to BTC and Ethereum, determinations of commodities. And so it's getting very convoluted in the way in which even the top parties that we trust, the SEC, for example, the CFTC, are actually stating what different types are. So what are your thoughts on this, and what are your thoughts on the progressions we make and how we clean this terminological conundrum up?
Yeah. So right now, like you said, it's very convoluted, right? It's not clear. So they typically go by the Howey test, right? So if you start hitting those prongs, well, guess what? You got a security, at least in current law. But with things like Facebook, right? With Facebook, they're going to be the pioneers for us, man. They're going through there. You got them. You got Kik. These guys they got to go in there and battle the SEC, FINRA, the Congress, the court system. We're going to get some clarity. It's going to clear a lot of things up for people. And that's really what we need. We need some people with some really deep pockets, with a lot of power, big, lots of legalese behind them. And we need those guys to go to, kind of go to war, so to speak, and then we'll be able to follow in their paths. In the meantime, all we can kind of do is what we know that is, I guess, the best we can do, right? Based off what laws, have been around for, 80, 90 years or something like that. And so, we've met with a ton of attorneys. And so we wanted to make sure that, in their opinions, that we're doing everything as possibly, as legal and as compliant as we possibly can.
Right. And I respect that a lot because obviously you ask that of all the CEOs that you speak to as well. But then there's the question, Rob, also of currency coins, those currency-centric systems, all the way to stable coin conversations as well. So I really wanted to talk to you about this, and I hope it's okay that we can. But when we go back to the very first iterations of the white paper, of blockchain integrated with cryptography to tokenized economies, we see the narrative of BTC. Now, in that instance, when it first emerged, the premise there was, if we base it on the white paper, was about peer-to-peer cash, wanting to be global money, sound money for the people. We now see a very different reality. I'm not talking about ideals. I'm not talking about anything more than what we see provably in front of us empirically. So the big question now is, with the currency-based system, with the focus on trying to create new forms of sound money, Libra's led a corporate agenda and really thrown that conversation into the mix, especially when it comes to the SEC and top-down power. BTC was supposed to be another narrative that really led the way for people's money. But is it? Let's really dig deep in this, because if we just look at the way it's treated, the way it's coloured, the way that it's supported, and the way it's shilled, what is BTC to you, Rob?
So to me, it was my red pill moment, right? I love Bitcoin. I love what it stands for. I love, all the benefits that it brings the world. To me, I see it as digital gold. People can say that's, that doesn't make sense because it's, there's only one gold, right? But to me, it's kind of a store of value now. Why? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, the core team isn't incentivized to really work on it. It doesn't have like Linux, where Linux is got all these big actors, big corporations paying developers to work on it. There's really nobody paying, the Bitcoin developers to work on Bitcoin. So they become motivated to work on other projects, things like Blockstream, stuff like that. And a lot of people don't realize that. They're like, wait a minute, man, Bitcoin is open to the world. You can all develop on it. Like, yeah, people can, make all kinds of Bitcoin improvement protocols. They can submit their BIPs, but it's not going to get approved, right? There's, only a handful that usually get approved. And again, it just kind of goes back to, the core devs, right? Are they properly incentivized to work on Bitcoin to make it better? Or do they kind of just leave it the way that it is? It works, it's safe, it's reliable, stop messing with it. I've said that, just fine, just leave it alone, leave it as a store of value. That's cool. But if they're going to work on it, they need to be a little bit, there needs to be more supervision. I know that people say that it's open to the world, anybody can read it, but how many people do you know that are experts in C++, that understand blockchain, that can understand, exactly what improvements they're making or what they're not doing to it? It's very difficult. So I did a video a while back that just said, leave Bitcoin alone, kind of like Brittany, right? Leave Bitcoin alone. Because unless you're going to have a team that is 100% dedicated to it, that's, trying to make it better, they should just leave it alone, leave it as it is. And it's just as a store of value. It fails as peer-to-peer cash. It's as simple as just try to send me $1. It's going to cost you $4 or $5. You can't ask some Venezuelan citizen to use Bitcoin, and when they're worried about freaking a penny, how are they going to pay 4 times the amount of the transaction just in fees? It's failed.
It's so interesting you say this because, and Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt sometimes, but it's only because of some of the things you're raising. Now, some people in the BTC camp, even some of the Bitcoiners, even some of the Bitcoin maximalists have actually suggested that perhaps Bitcoin is not for everyone when it comes to the narrative of SOV. Simply because of different financial positions, different economic scenarios for different regions of the globe. So in affluent regions, comparatively, BTC, from an SOV standpoint, can really work because at the moment it's functioning as that SOV. But I want to bring it back to the conversation of form, because if we look at it technologically, a lot of questions certainly arise when we look at that compared to the white paper itself. And I know I'm harping back and really just trying to dig deep in the start of BTC, but the reason is, Rob, is that white paper was the reason why many cypherpunks were so passionate about BTC. It's the reason why they spread the narrative. It's the reason why BTC was so prominent so quickly, because at the time there was a lot of governmental pressure, there was a lot of financial instability globally, especially in the US. So it was a perfect storm to really push for some alternative sound money. But no one talks about that. No one talks about the fact that at that time, the agenda was very different, and that for years, in fact, that stayed that way. But now the SOV dominates, and that's not reflected in any of that early narrative.
So again, when people, they become tribalists in this space, and they don't want to admit their baby's ugly. It's really kind of that simple, right? So if it fails to act what its core purpose was designed for, they try to just kind of pivot on the narrative a little bit, right? Say, well, it's not really meant to be peer-to-peer cash. It's meant to be a store of value. It's like, well, hold on, man. Those 9 beautiful pages that Satoshi Nakamoto wrote, what is at the freaking top of it, man? It's peer-to-peer digital cash. That is its freaking intention.
Yeah.
And then you look at things like, okay, this Bitcoin Cash incident, right? So you've got the core team that doesn't want bigger blocks. They say that, Satoshi didn't, intend for that to happen, right? But then if you go back to Satoshi's own writings, he says when the network can support it, when the network's at a point it needs it, when the infrastructure around the actual blockchain network is, strong enough, he'll make bigger blocks. Right. Satoshi's own freaking writing saying that, right? But these people with Bitcoin Core, they've got little side projects, right? They got like Blockstream. Maybe they're working on Lightning. Maybe they're doing something else. And guess what? If Bitcoin becomes peer-to-peer cash and works really fast, what happens to their freaking businesses? What happens to their side projects that are making them money? Nobody wants to talk about this. So and people think that I'm some kind of Bitcoin Cash maximalist. No, man. Look, I like Stellar, right? I like XLM. I like GoChain. I like Komodo. I love stuff that works, right? That's what I like. The stuff that's, fast, cheap, reliable. I like things like even XRP, dude. I mean, it's fast, cheap, reliable, man. So all of that stuff works better than Bitcoin as peer-to-peer electronic cash. Face it. Now, why didn't they want bigger blocks? People, they come back to the story and they're like, oh, look at Bitcoin Cash's blocks. They're all freaking empty. It's like, okay, but guess what? When you have another CryptoKitties moment or something like that, where you got this big wave of people that come in, guess what? They're going to fill up those freaking blocks, aren't they, right? Why build it for just the usage we have today? Why not build it for the usage we intend to have tomorrow?
Right, and on that note, scalability is part of the focus for many of the forked codes that have emerged since BTC's initiation into the space. But Rob, one of the confusing parts I find today in 2019 is that many of the Bitcoin maximalists and even some of the Bitcoiners who are distinguished from the former, they still advocate for the emergence of BTC to become a currency. So the question has to be raised, does this even make sense? These two camps of SOV and currency, given finite supply, given so many aspects that don't necessarily align with monetary policy. We have the likes of prominent speakers all the way from Pomp and his Pomp effect to, you know, a multitude of celebrities speaking about this. A lot of influencers are now transitioning from what they call the altcoin narrative to now pro-BTC. But the issue is, how can they, in the same breath, advocate for an SOV and then a currency to be spread around the world to be used? I'm being really serious about this because you're raising real questions about regional complexities, you know, use case complexities globally as well, depending on where we're from and what we need BTC to do, or any currency, in fact. So, you know, can you expand on this a bit more for us, because it's something of an issue that just isn't discussed enough.
Look, man, there's different vehicles. Not everybody wants a Lambo. Maybe some people want a minivan. Look, people just need to face up and realize that Bitcoin can't be everything for everyone. And it can't do everything that everybody wants it to do either. So right now, they've pivoted and said it's a store of value. Guess what? That's exactly what it is. It's not peer-to-peer cash. It's not. And they can say, oh, we have all these second layer solutions that are coming. That's great. They're coming. But Lightning Network is a pile of crap. It's too hard to use. You got to be a freaking developer just to figure it out. It doesn't work. They end up having issues with their code. And they just kind of push out messages that says, guys, update your code immediately, you know, with no other explanation whatsoever, right? It's like, you can't expect people to adopt things like that, right? It's just not going to work. We're just, you know, making the blocks bigger could actually speed things up and make it cheap. But they don't want to do that, okay, because that affects these second layer solutions that they're trying to do. So with that being said, if they want to just say that it's a store of value, and currently that's all that it is, right? You can't use it effectively for small transactions, for cash. You know, just they need to stop being such a tribalist and just saying, you know, Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. You know, why don't you look over here? You know, what's this thing called Stellar, right? What's this thing called GoChain? What's this thing called Bitcoin Cash? What are all these other things? Because again, not everybody needs the same vehicle. So some people, if they're not really into using crypto, they're just totally into it for speculation. Dude, Bitcoin, right? I mean, that thing. It's
well,
like
you hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head with the term speculation, because I want to dig deep on that, and then I want to talk about, if that's okay, the value in not having a maximalist approach. You know, having a more open perspective on the potential of different verticals, of different use cases, and certainly different applications when it comes to currency, a utility, commodity, and so on. So going back to the term speculation. Now, Rob, if we, you know the history with paper money, with fiat itself, it's a system of belief as well, you know, but it's geared from the top down. You know, it's supported by tax systems, it's supported by governments, it's supported by, you know, conglomerates, corporates, or you know, everyone. And then obviously the people themselves reciprocally engage and use that system. Now with BTC, it's not the case. With BTC, unlike gold even, there isn't that inherent reciprocal top-down grassroots support. It is essentially a grassroots movement trying to change the narrative, change the game. It started with a different narrative, as you know, trying to circumvent authorities, trying to be private. None of those things were actually true. The narrative of currency, we now know the agenda shifted to SOV. So in that sense, when it comes to speculation, my question is, the blockchain, the BTC blockchain, is it built more so on belief of prospective value? And if we use the analogy of digital gold for a moment, do you think, also about the prospecting of gold? I ask you this because if we look at the history of BTC, the real benefactors, or the profiteers essentially, were those who entered in early. The ones that got in early in time were the ones that now are able to, ironically, sell if they want to some of their assets and you know, go and buy their Lambo, or go and buy their mansion, go and buy whatever they want. But the issue of speculation and the kind of promises that are made for more value is what I'm alluding to. Is it speculation that's the primary asset here?
So again, with Bitcoin, in the beginning, it was a beautiful thing, right? A lot of people that were out there promoting it, pushing it, altruistic motives, trying to create global digital peer-to-peer cash. The thought of, you know, it being worth, you know, $20,000 a Bitcoin was probably just lunacy to them, all right? It's evolved. It's changed since then. The altruistic people that have big bags from the beginning, you know, a lot of them do, you know, a lot of philanthropic things with that money. You know, a lot of them do. A lot of them don't even tell people they have it. A lot of people just, kind of just keep it in an account, on an old paper wallet or on a Monarch wallet, and they just don't touch it. Today, we have something very different. So the people in the space, for the most part today, are people that are, they're bag holders, and they're here because they expect that bag to be worth more. Exactly. And if they can come to terms with that and be honest with people, everybody's going to be in the same freaking boat. I mean, if you look, the trade volume, all that stuff on these exchanges, it's all fake. A lot of it's just completely fake. Why? Why? Because people care about the price. And so they have all this fake volume so they can pump up the price of these tokens, which is what people are currently here for. Exactly. There's not really a lot of people here for the tech. The people that are here for the tech are usually the ones building it, right? They're usually the guys building it. There are different people in the space that, are genuinely interested, but those are the minority. Right now, we still have a lot of bag holders that got burned in 17, burned in 18. They're hodling tight, hoping that their crap coins are going to go back to where they were, or their crap tokens. And they're probably not going to see that. But, just to kind of go back to Bitcoin a little bit, I mean, these people need to realize that there's more than just Bitcoin out there. Bitcoin is the Kleenex, right? It is the OG. It is the most incredible invention of my lifetime. It is a beautiful thing. But it doesn't have to be everything for everyone. If you're not going to make it digital cash, peer-to-peer, then just fine. Leave it as a store of value. Cool. Let's go look at some of these other projects, right? There's a whole bunch of them out there. You got stuff like Dash, Zcash. You got a zillion different things out there. You got Digibyte, right? I mean, these are people with, great communities that are doing great things. Got 5 different algorithms in their blockchain. It's cheap. It's fast. It's cool, man. And there's other things out there, but they're so tribalist. They have their bag. That's all they care about is their freaking bag, because they got a big bag of it. Right. And that's the only thing they're going to talk about, because it's going to deter from the message of Bitcoin, and they're going to maybe put the spotlight on some other crypto, and that could somehow take value from their bag. So these people just need to kind of wake up and just, hey, man, it doesn't work as peer-to-peer cash. It's a store of value. Very
powerful message. So if we use an analogy for gold, for example, Rob, obviously you're not an advocate for people going out and spending it like cash, because, you do regard it to be that likened to digital gold. But in the sense of determination from the SEC, for example, CFTC, they decided at some point in history that BTC was a commodity. Now, I want to talk about that quite seriously, because for something to be a commodity, my understanding is that it has to have inherent utility. It has to have inherent proof that it has some sort of value beyond itself, because otherwise, we could literally pick up a rock on the ground and say, look, this has store of value if everyone just believes so. So what is the fundamental utility beyond simply the point of belief, beyond, the masses or the maximalist proponents of Bitcoin, the buyers? What's the real utility beyond simply the mechanisms of the blockchain? Because that can be appropriated. Cryptography is not the inherent single value of BTC, because, again, we know the code can be duplicated, appropriated. So what's that one's distinction that makes it truly digital gold, if indeed, because gold is inherently a commodity, it's a utility, it was a currency, can be used as a currency if it would, so be it, and is regarded entirely as a store of value, not just from people, but also from the top down as well.
Yeah. So with anything, it's worth something because people say it is, right? It doesn't matter if it's a dollar, if it's a tank, if it's a rock. But with Bitcoin, it's the most beautiful, creation, software creation, digital, freedom for the world that's ever been created. It's totally, unique, one of a kind. You can't replicate Bitcoin. Yeah, you can fork it, you can clone it, but it's story. Like Satoshi Nakamoto, some benevolent creator that created this, alien technology for the entire world to use. People can take, a paper wallet or 12 words in their brain, and they can die with it, right? Or they can cross borders with the 12 words, and they can go put it into another wallet and have access to their funds, or send funds from Venezuela to South Africa or wherever they want. It's the first time in the world that could be done safely and securely, right? Obviously, there's some drawbacks, right? Currently, because people just either A, leave it alone as a store of value, or B, just kind of fix it a little bit so it's a little faster, right? But I don't want to get too into the weeds, but you ask, why is it worth something? Well, if you look at Google Google, for instance, start off as just basically an algorithm, right? It's just a line of code. That's all it was just lines of code. And they built these huge businesses around it, right? And they use those lines of code to create advertisements and target users, and they create, tons of money, right? What are they, like $800 billion trillion company, something like that? A lot. And so, I mean, if you look at Bitcoin, if it was a business, it could be that too, right? I mean, it could. But the reason why it's worth something.
I just want to jump in there, though. The premise was never for BTC to become a business, or for Bitcoin to become a business. And we see the emergence of programmable money with efforts from Ethereum and layer one solutions beyond that, building smart contract solutions. They certainly are moving that direction. But Rob, pulling it back, though, to the question, though, of essentially where's the real utility? Determinations of commodity have been made. Still trying to understand, though, what is the fundamental utility of BTC as an asset?
Gotcha. So currently, its sole purpose is, basically a store of value, right? So that's currently what its purpose is right now.
But is that a utility, Rob? Is that an actual determinal? Like, can we determine that as actually utility?
So then, for the utility side of things, I mean, I would say that's a utility, right? It's acting as a vehicle to store wealth. So that's a pretty solid utility. I mean, if I leave $1,000 out there on the sidewalk, it's not very secure, right? So this, to me, that right there creates a utility for me. But more so, I mean, you got the blockchain aspect of it, where you got the immutability, you got the ability to store files in it. That's incredible, right? Then you've got the ability to actually spend it globally across any border. Dude, those are huge utilities. There may be blockchains that do it better. Nobody's really arguing that, and the people that are, they need to really read a little bit more. But it offers immense utility, and another part of it is we don't know who created it, right? There isn't some central figure behind it that we have to worry about doing some kind of nefarious things with it, or having a bad day and burning it to the ground. It's going to take big mining pools. It's going to take core developers. It's going to take something like that to make some kind of some kind of
and what's interesting too. It's fascinating.
So there's a ton of utility. Yeah.
Right. It's fascinating you're talking about, once again, harping back to that, not only belief, but the store of value being the primary utility asset. But you also mentioned Satoshi. So how do you think Satoshi would be feeling, or the group of people, if you will, that formulate that Satoshian identity? How do you think they'd feel, given that they would argue that SOV was never, ever the utility intent? It was never meant to be that primary utility. And what does that mean in terms of potential for future court cases? We know that there's certain figures, certain very controversial figures right now going through some court cases. But I'm being real about this, Rob, because at what point do we acknowledge the basis? Do we acknowledge the agenda and the initial premise for BTC?
Yeah, I mean, the initial founders of it, I would imagine, if they're still with us, they're probably rolling over in their grave. I mean, if you just go back to, Satoshi, right? When he left the project, he turned the keys to the castle over to Gavin Andresen, right? Gavin Andresen got kicked out of Bitcoin Core, dude, by the Bitcoin Core developers. A lot of people don't know that. I started talking about this a while back, and, that just kind of speaks to, to the, I guess, kind of the environment there, right? So it's not very friendly, right? And so when Gavin Andresen, the guy that Satoshi turned over the keys to the castle to, got kicked out of it, he went over to Bitcoin Cash. He basically said, this is the project that I started working on. And you look at people like Roger Ver, who was one of the biggest proponents for Bitcoin, created the Bitcoin Foundation, was the one out there pumping it to everybody, telling the world about it.
Sure.
He's over at Bitcoin Cash. You got freaking Vitalik Buterin, right, saying Bitcoin's too hard to freaking work with, but these Bitcoin Cash guys, I can work with these guys. They're friendly. I'm gonna start putting my data in their empty blocks. I mean, you start seeing stuff like that. You start scratching your head, saying, "Well, who's running Bitcoin, right? Why isn't this what Satoshi created, right? Why isn't this working?" Satoshi said he was going to make bigger blocks. Satoshi's own writing said that. Why don't we have that, right? What's really going on? Who's the people that are really coding this thing? Oh, it's open to the world. Anybody can code it. No, not true. Not true. So, and then there's not enough qualified people out there to be able to actually read the code. If you look at stuff like they created, what was it? It was the CVE report, if I remember right. They, in September of last year, created another bug that they released live into the world that could have allowed to create as many Bitcoin as somebody wanted. So they could have created another, let's just say 21 billion. Let's create 800 billion. Or like in 2010, they created 184 billion. There's these bugs that happen, right? Back then we had Satoshi. Guess who found the last bug in September of 18? Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash found the Bitcoin freaking bug, right? And so why I'm kind of rambling on about this stuff is, we really need to look at who the Bitcoin core team is. We really need to see who's there, for the altruistic, purposes, or who's there just kind of holding it back. So that way these second layer solutions they're making money on, makes money. And then, how do we get people that are really amazing C++ programmers and people in Bitcoin that are incentivized to work on Bitcoin if that's what we decide we want to do? Right. I'm fine with just leaving it alone, man. Just leave it alone. Leave it as a store of value. There's all these other things out there that work better.
It's seriously an interesting conversation. It's really clear that...
I don't want to risk messing it up, right? So how about leave it alone? Because can you imagine, like, if they put another bug in it on accident, right, and nobody caught it, and then there's 800 billion freaking Bitcoins. What does that do to the actual cryptocurrency market? What does that do to the banks? What does that do to people that have their entire life savings in Bitcoin? So I just say leave Bitcoin the hell alone and go use something else, man. Anything else. I mean, go use that for cash. So
Robert, it's so clear. It's so clear from this kind of conversation that you don't regard BTC as sound money. You regard that as the store of value, as an entirely different asset class. So thanks for letting us know, from your perspective. I certainly at this point in time do concur with that perspective, that it is distinct from sound money. Now, when we talk about sound money, typically what tends to happen with good monetary policy is that there is a means in which the inflationary system that's built in, or in this case deflationary, we'll look at that, really enables for a graduation towards stability. Now, when you have a finite supply, whether that's socially determined or mechanistically determined by the blockchain, that can arguably really change and challenge that possibility. Because again, how do you stop BCH or any of those fork codes from upholding that store of value coupled with currency? It's a real anomaly, because there's no suggestion that any BCH or any of them will necessarily move into a stable unit of account for transactions for the globe, despite the increase in block size, if indeed the finite aspect of this is maintained. So is there any flexibility in the BCH camp to really support this global sound money system, especially when we see sound stablecoin systems emerging, the suggestions of that, whether they be from corporate enterprise or hopefully from grassroots movements, to really showcase what stable systems can actually do?
Yeah. So, you kind of covered a lot right there. I think one thing, I guess just to be, kind of just put my belief out there. I think all cryptocurrencies for the most part, don't meet the requirements of sound money. They're for speculation. That's what people are using them for in this market. Is they're holding them, and a lot of them don't want to use it, right? So they're not using it to, buy their Starbucks. They're not using it, to pay for, for whatever goods and services. And they're not going to. They're not going to, man. If you look at these Bitcoin holders, right? Ask them, hey, when was the last time you used your Bitcoin for something? Like, oh, no. I'm holding on to this thing, man. It's going to moon. Right. I don't care what camp you talk to. They're all holding on to their crypto. The only time they really get rid of it is when they swap it for something else they think it's going to make them more money.
That's true.
So what we need in crypto for adoption, and this is where, I've butted heads with Roger Ver. I'm like, dude, nobody's going to freaking use this stuff as cash. We need stable tokens, man. We need something that is backed by $1, something that's, or whatever the government's currency is.
Or backed by a basket of currencies, whatever but a grassroots movement. So how do you get around the issues of Libra and the digital currencies coming from the top, Rob? Because Andre Antonopoulos talks about this triad challenge, where you have the challenge from the top, the challenge from the enterprise, and the challenge from the people. So far, we haven't seen an example of a true and authentic stablecoin scenario from the people. Is it even possible, given that there's that intractable connection with fiat, an intractable connection with money itself as we know it today?
Yeah, there's things out there like David Zembeck created a peg that's stable, that doesn't have anything backing by it. It's not backed by a currency or a basket of currencies or anything like that. It just stays stable. So it's, it's incredibly genius what he did, but it's also, it's not backed by anything. So again, kind of the same boat. So if you look at things like stable tokens and stable coins, things like DAI, right? You could have smart contracts that create things that are based off assets. People will use that, but I'll tell you, merchants right now, they don't want to deal with Ethereum. They don't want to deal with Bitcoin. They don't want to deal with anything that's volatile because, dude, if you're a grocery store, No, man, it's worse than that. If you're a grocery store and you've got 2% profit margins, and that's all you got, and your token tanks 85%, 30%, 20%, you're out of business.
That's
right?
what I mean, Rob. Is you can't trust the price because it's
the
so volatile.
volatility.
Yeah. So how do we get around that with Bitcoin Cash, for
Stable
example?
coins.
Well,
so honest coin. So honest coin is like Bitcoin Cash. So that to me, again, is a store of value, right? You can use it as peer-to-peer electronic cash. You can. It's cheap. Like I send it out to people, every single video. $100 costs me like, I don't know, maybe a penny to send to them, know, something like that. It's super cheap. But don't think for a second, I don't think that Bitcoin Cash is going to be worth more, next year, right?
I see. So Rob, do you think that that's a better store of value than BTC? So really, I've never had someone had this conversation before. So it's a fair point.
I think there's only one Bitcoin. You know what I mean? So Bitcoin Cash is different from Bitcoin. All right. So it's maybe what Satoshi wanted. Okay. But the original Bitcoin isn't controlled, it's Satoshi's creation. That is the original Bitcoin. So I fully believe that. Bitcoin Cash, I think, works extremely well as digital money. It's not stable, though. That's why they created something called Simple Ledger Protocol, right? That allows for the creation of their own tokens, kind of like an Ethereum of sorts. And they have something called Honest Coin, right? Or Honest Token. And so that's a stable token, right? And so merchants would use that. See, imagine you work in Venezuela, right? You're making, $1 a day and you're paid in freaking Ethereum and it drops, right? Maybe it has a black swan moment. It drops 50%. You're down at 50 cents for the day. If you're a worker, how are you supposed to tell your family, right? If you're a merchant, how are you supposed to explain to your investors or to your vendors why you can't pay them? But if you're paying them in stable tokens and stable coins and things like that, that's where you're going to get adoption because it's so fast, it's so convenient.
So in that instance, though, Rob, why the focus on the increased block size? Why the focus on trying to make this a more seamless, plausible currency of the future for BCH? If in fact, the narrative still of what lies beneath is the SOV.
Gotcha. So a lot of people say that, the price is going to mellow out once we get enough people in, right? Once you get enough people in, the price is just going to mellow out. Maybe. And so that's when they say things like, it will be cash one day. It will be stable one day.
See those analyses
done today.
Right. We see that
today it's not, man. And all the businesses and all the people whose lives would be freaking wrecked if they took their paychecks in this market. Explain that to them. Like, one day it'll be stable. Yeah, well, I just lost my house freaking yesterday, dude.
Exactly, Rob. I mean, and that's why I want to talk to you about this because it's fine to have a bell curve. It's fine to have a tweet out, from one of the Bitcoin maximalists or one of the Bitcoiners that eventually will get to sound money. Or if we have Andreas, advocating for that position. But the prospect of that, is too damaging for present day. When we're talking about engagement. So let's move it to stablecoins for a second. Do you think that it's possible to have a Satoshi vision style, no pun intended with SV, but some sort of alignment with the premise of peer-to-peer cash that essentially is backed by something and is stable? Do you think that's possible? And do you think it's likely that people will drive something like that to challenge things like Libra?
Yeah, I think that, you get stuff like DAI that's out there right now. I think you can have things that are smart contracts. I think you can have tokens built off of like Bitcoin. See, Bitcoin, you can create smart contracts off of it. David Zembeck did that in like 2013, 2012. So you can do it. You can actually do this stuff now, and you could have a stable token running off the freaking Bitcoin blockchain.
Right. Well, we know that Satoshi Vision, that actual fork, is trying to do programmable aspects. They're trying to build on it. We know that, and they're also trying to be scalable as well. But
Zembeck did that 7 years ago, man. So I mean,
but the question is, as you mentioned before, many of the BTC camp don't want that. They don't want it to be thwarted. They don't want that code to be changed or anything developed upon it. So again, how do we start to see evidence empirically of stability, trust, and means of utility for the use case of exchange, for goods and services to be purchased, but not with top-down controls? Because that's the big asset here, really, is having autonomy in sound money.
Yeah, so a lot of people the masses aren't going to trust it unless it's spoon-fed to them from their governments or from big corporations, right? And that's just, the straight-up truth, right? I don't care if people will say, eventually we'll get there, blah, 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 whatever. Look, there's all kinds of benefits that blockchain is going to bring to the world, right? But a stable token to be completely trusted by the masses is going to end up coming from a government. You got China that is freaking doing their own cryptocurrency, for better or worse. All these other governments are going to start following suits. And people are going to start.
May align too, Rob, because of the G7 alliance. We might see, international conglomerates and, corporations.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're going to see these governments do that, and these people, a lot of them are sheeple, man. They don't understand. They don't think for themselves. They don't understand all this stuff. And look, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people just trying to explain the basics of like blockchain and crypto. So now try telling that to a farmer in Vietnam or Venezuela or any of this kind of stuff. They're going to end up like Venezuela. They got the petro, right? They don't want it, right? They want to use something else like Dash or anything.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is these governments are going to end up force feeding cryptocurrency to their people.
So how do we fight that system, that reality, Rob? Because that's what BTC initially, its white paper was trying to do. So how do we start to engage with stable coins from the people?
Sure, but again, you can't fight this stuff, right? People, they say you can. Look, you're not going to. They're going to win. They always do. So what can you do to kind of I guess protect yourself and your friends and family and other people, right? That's what you should be asking yourself. So we're not going to prevent these global currencies from coming to be. They're going to happen. People are going to be using them. But what it's going to do is it's going to create awareness. And so when they realize that, hey, wait a minute, I'm using this currency that the government can, track, it can, stop, it can take it back from me, it sees where I spend it, all that kind of stuff. They might start thinking a little bit more and say, wait a minute, what's this Bitcoin thing, right? What's this Ethereum thing? What's this, this, I don't know, this XRP, this XLM, this GoChain, this DigiBuy, what is all this stuff over here, right? And that's going to start helping, the adoption to blockchain and all the cool services and all the cool things that come from the actual blockchain infrastructure itself. Right now, everybody is so focused on speculation. That's what we're in right now. We're in this big speculative bubble, right? Everybody's hoping for stuff to go up. Let's start talking about the tech, man. How do we make this stuff better, right? So you want to create a smart contract that creates a stable token that people can, basically say, hey, look, this is worth $1 because you can see the smart contract right there. It's bulletproof. It's ironclad. It's backed by, this basket of assets or whatever that's in escrow. Nobody can touch. We know what it is, and you can see exactly how many of them are out there, and and they can put little controls in it, to combat inflation, deflation, all that kind of stuff is possible. People can do that. We can create stuff like that. But until we kind of have that global coin of sorts that gets a lot of people looking at cryptocurrency, dude, nobody's going to freaking use it, man.
Well, it just shows, Rob, how early we are on this space. Literally, because now the top-down powers, the governments and the enterprises, they're really paying attention. They've been listening to those the first decade of proponents of this technology, and they're now acting finally. So, do you envisage that subsequent to those parties reacting, that we're really going to see the limelight shed or the crypto space lit up then for options, for education? The reason I ask, Rob, is because never in history has social media been so powerful in terms of changing social dynamics, even changing economic outcomes for regions around the world. So it's possible, arguably, that the technology, ironically, that preceded and predated blockchain, and also that came forward beyond it, could actually enable a greater, real-world scenario of widespread adoption post-government and enterprise reaction, when we start as people waking up to just how dominant the new technologies are going to be with tokenized systems that perhaps aren't in the interest of people.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, there's a lot there. I guess just to kind of cover a couple things, with Monarch and a lot of companies like us, we're trying to make stuff simple for people to use, right? Because that's one of the biggest obstacles we have in crypto right now is people don't understand it. They don't want to. They're afraid it's going to just explode on them, whatever. So we're trying to dumb it down for the people when they do come, right? So for people to come into the space, what do we need? Well, we need merchants and employers and people like that to be paying with true, sound, solid, stable currencies, right? Mm-hmm. So that's like with Monarch Pay, right? We're trying to get people in that way because I can't pitch to a business, use Ethereum, use Bitcoin, whatever, when it has so much volatility. But They understand DAI, they understand TUSD a little bit. They'll be able to just convert it and put it right back in their bank account, and it doesn't cost them more than 1%. They're on board with that. It's stuff like that. It's stuff like the global coin. It's all this. It's this huge different just this beautiful symphony of all these things that has to happen to get the blockchain adoption we all want. Because right now, everybody that's in here and says that, that I'm an idiot for what I just said, these guys are bag holders, dude. These guys are speculators. They're not builders. I mean, if I ask them what a guided tour puzzle protocol is, they'd be like, huh? What?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, but is it going to go up? Is it going to go up?
Right, exactly. And Rob, we've seen this many a time with a lot of the feedback, a lot of the crypto Twitter sort of commentary as well. So what you're really saying is the future is going to be built on stability and also enterprise, and more importantly, the construction. It's ironic almost, or it's more very fitting that you come from a history of building construction-based businesses, those that are trying to literally build in the real world. And now you're doing this more in the virtual and the digital world by literally espousing construction of real world, meaningful enterprise, meaningful startups that can actually do real things, and then perhaps have a token attached to them that is a utility. But fundamentally, what I like hearing about with this conversation is stability is relevant and volatility is really challenging the future of this industry. So Rob, thank you so much for being so forward, for providing so many different perspectives on very tough questions. Mate, is there anything you'd like to say to everybody, just to finish off the conversation, to really encapsulate what you stand for?
Man, it was always just great hanging with you, right? It was we don't get these conversations very often, especially on the channels. People, usually I'm the guy that's asking them about their project, and so this is obviously some controversial stuff for some people. But if they look into it and they look past their bags that they're holding, maybe they'll start to see that, hey, we need to make things easier for people to use, and then they'll start using it, right? And that's what we got to focus on and constantly make them better. And with Monarch, that's what we're all about, man. We're all about just creating something that's of value, that's safe, secure, reliable, decentralized, that they own their seed, their keys, where they don't have to understand what, blockchain and crypto and just how it all works. They just want it to work, right? They just want that Facebook experience. So that's what we're building, for, basically for their, they can be their own Monarch anywhere in the world, right from the palm of their hand. And then if you're a merchant, you can use Monarch Pay and you don't have to worry about all the crazy fees. And it's things like this that I think will help get, the masses in, once, or at least when they're ready to, the stuff will be there for them and it'll be easy for them to use. And so every day, man, that's what we do, man. We just keep making it better and better. And so anybody wants to find me, I'm super easy to find. If you want to find a Monarch wallet, it's just monarchwallet.com. If you're a merchant, it's monarchpay.com. And again, I'm super easy to find. Just type in Crypto Beadles anywhere on the internet and you'll find me.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all seen your ads, and mate, thank you on behalf of all those in crypto for having this very transparent conversation. And thank you also for being an advocate for building block by block. It's all about putting forward real meaning and injecting that into the blockchain. You certainly are endeavoring to do that with Monarch, your own venture, your own startup. You're putting your own money where your mouth is as well. And mate, you also do the other side, that journalistic endeavor. You travel in the world very soon once again, trying to provide free information from the source. So mate, from many different angles, I want to thank you for your time, for what you do. I sincerely mean that. And thank you also for being a colleague in the space, because at the end of the day, we just simply need more truth, trust, and transparency in this system. And you are part of that conversation. So thanks, Rob, for doing all you do.
Hey, well, I'm honored, man. So thanks a bunch for everything that you do as well. I really appreciate you and all the stuff that you bring to this space. So God bless you. And I love all you out there. And so anyways, go Bitcoin.
Thanks, Rob, and take care.